Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Continuing our run through of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Right now we're up to the episode called Behind the Lines. It's the fourth episode of the sixth season. Aired on October 20th, 1997. Written by Renee Echevarria. Directed by LeVar Burton. In this episode, when Kira's resistance cell learns that the Dominion will soon be bringing down the Federation's minefield, they plot to hinder the enemy's progress. But matters are complicated when the female changeling arrives on Terok Nor and pays Odo a visit. Meanwhile, Captain Sisko is relieved of command of the Defiant while Jadzia Dax commands it on a mission. We're joined by Clay. Clay, how are you?
I'm good. I'm not feeling great about this resistance movement, though, because apparently in between episodes, Jake joined. Well, it makes me feel like they were like, Jake, you don't want any part of this, Kira. We've only got, it's just you and me. It's like,
damn
call
it.
Jake.
Call Jake. Yeah, because that's right. They did decline him in the last episode at the bar, didn't they? They said, no, Jake, you don't want any part of this. This is too dangerous. And apparently Danger in the resistance cell is sitting around comfortably in people's apartment buildings talking about the resistance. I think the resistance is always kind of goofy in this. In the 24th century Dominion authoritarian rule, there's no surveillance state whatsoever. They're all changelings and stuff, but people are freely talking about what they want to do to resist.
It's like they had a co-ed softball team, and then they realized they were down one person, and they're like, fuck. Call Jake.
Get him in here. He's still not published. Let's take a break. We're going to play an audio clip, and me and Clay are going to come back. We're going to break down Behind the Lines.
I just got word. Captain Bennett's promotion has come through. At my recommendation, Starfleet's putting her in charge of 7th Tactical Wing. She's one of the best adjutants I've ever had. A strong grasp of strategy and ability to see the big picture.
Sounds like it's not going to be easy to find someone to take her place.
I already have. You.
Sir?
I've been very impressed with you over these past few weeks. I think we would make a good team.
Thank you, sir.
Your new assignment is effective immediately.
Immediately, sir. What about the Argolis mission?
Commander Dax will captain the Defiant. She is up to it, isn't she?
Oh, absolutely, sir. I guess I'd just gotten used to the idea of commanding the mission myself.
All right, so Clay, this is, I guess I'll start this just by saying that this is one of this serialized arc that gets a lot of accolades and things like that and sort of trend setting and stuff like that. I think it's interesting going through these episodes and seeing how the DS9 writers are kind of learning how to serialize while they're also still doing episodic TV as like a baseline. So they're racing around behind the scenes. There's all these kind of production stories about the writers where the episodes are getting shifted around. The writers have to run between rooms to say where are your characters in your story? Where are they going at the end of your story? Where am I going when this gets here? And I think they've done a pretty good job. Although I think Behind the Lines is interesting to me because Behind the Lines feels at the same time like the most modern episode they've done, while it also feels like a very, very Star Trek-y episode at the same time. And I'll throw it over to you just by saying that I also didn't realize, and this kind of ties into what I just said, in retrospect, the DS9 storyline in this arc is far superior to any of the Starfleet storylines, except for maybe Rocks and Shoals. That seems to be a recurring theme. I'm very happy when we spend time on the station, but when we're seeing what Sisko and the others are up to not on the station, it always feels a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, well, I think that there's not really a lot of character stuff going on with Sisko and everybody else, right? It's just...
But I guess you could argue that whole plot is a Sisko character story. I just don't think that it's very good. I don't think the Sisko storyline ever establishes really what Sisko thinks about all of this. It's just kind of the cliche. Every captain in Star Trek always has the thing where they go through the command is taken away from them and how do they react to it, and they all react very similar to each other. Yeah, and this is Sisko's go at that, and I just don't think that. What I was saying at the start about it being the most episodic but the most modern, the Sisko storyline feels the most like it's the worst attempt at a serialized story. It feels like you should have been threading something the entire arc with what Sisko's going through. I was even thinking Dax isn't the right character to take command. Like if this was a modern series, you'd have the young up and comer who's sort of like hot for command, and Sisko's kind of realizing the time is passing him by, just like the guy in the motion picture, Decker. Like you need that kind of a character, and Dax doing it. Besides the fact that I don't find Terry Farrell to be a great command leader in her acting, it doesn't. I don't think that Sisko really has much of a conflict here. It's like he's like, damn, I really want to be out there. Stuck at the job, though. Can't go out with my buddies. And it's like, that's not a very good wartime story for where they are in this arc.
Yeah, it feels like it should be someone who's, well, I mean, if you look at the people who are available, you're not going to give it to Bashir. You're not going to give it to O'Brien. You can't give it to Worf because Worf isn't there, right?
Yep.
Is he somewhere else?
He's on the Klingon ship at this point. He's separate from everybody.
Yeah, so and you can't give it to Kira because Kira's on Terok Nor. You can't give it to Odo because he's there too. There's no one really left who is a recurring character to give it to Dax.
Nog, Clay. Nog is there.
Excuse me, yes. So in that sense, it makes sense to give it to Dax, but I agree. I mean, if I had my choice, I would probably give it to Worf. Because I don't feel like Dax presents any sort of interesting counterpoint to Sisko as far as like what a commander would look like or what a captain would look like.
Yeah.
Other than just like she is also there while he is there in the same room. And it's funny how they both respond to when they say captain.
Do you think? Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Well, whereas Worf has sort of an ethos. And you would assume that the way that he would take command would be could theoretically be stylistically different and possibly abrasive to Sisko in certain ways. So I think that would be more interesting. And I think that's what the problem is with the Sisko thing is it's just, it's a character arc, I guess, but it's not. There's nothing like really pressing against him or causing him conflict. Like he's just kind of there, and it's like, I guess I'm sitting behind a desk for now. Yeah,
well, I think it's internal to a fault almost. Like I don't even know if the script thinks that the reason Sisko's upset is because it's the young up and comer that they think Dax is taking his place. Like I think that's part of it. Like him watching Dax kind of makes it feel that way, but it feels more like he just wants to go back to doing that, but he doesn't put up a fight about his new position at all. So
right.
Is Sisko's position in this just that he thinks that he realizes he is in the best place to help as like a field admiral, basically, and step away from the Defiant, and he just misses the action? Or is there... I just feel that's not enough. Like, if he wanted that, I feel like he should voice that opinion about how he's unhappy sort of here behind a desk. But instead, we just get scenes of him rubbing his face as he's waiting for the Defiant to come back. And it just, it doesn't, it's not good enough. Like, in a serialized modern story, I think that would build over the season. And you'd see Sisko getting a little bit more and more frustrated by like being behind the desk and the bureaucracy, and he can't. I almost said patriarchy, and the bureaucracy is like weighing him down, and he just wants to go out there and be on the front lines of this war. And they don't do that. So it's this episodic problem where they cram this little Sisko story into an episode, but it does not feel like it has enough room to breathe to really mean anything. And it ends up with me wondering what it was all for.
Yeah, I don't even think like. Even the young upstart up and comer thing definitely doesn't come through. I think the only reason that you would go there is if you're projecting it on there because that's how they usually do it, like you said.
Yes, right.
Especially because I mean he and Dax have a relationship where he literally calls her old man, so it kind of takes any youthfulness out of her ascending in the ranks.
Yes,
but yeah, there's no conflict for him. Other than the lack of conflict. And I guess that's sort of a weird way to look at it, where it's like, well, his conflict is lack of conflict. And that's where it's like, okay, cool, great.
Yeah.
That doesn't exactly make for riveting television, unfortunately.
It did away with the, we were not on the Defiant while it went somewhere, though. We
didn't even see it this time.
Do you think that was a problem with this? Like, is that... Do we need to see what's happening on the Defiant to get a better glimpse into Sisko? Not that Sisko has to be on there, but like I don't know. It felt weird. It almost felt like that storyline needed to see the Defiance thing that they were going through and Sisko's role sort of crossed against each other. Like you would get rid of the other DS9 plots, and you would just play off Sisko being in this like mind-numbing boredom versus what the Defiant is undergoing. I don't know if it's necessary, but
no, I think what they probably needed to do was have Sisko try to do stuff and ultimately be pushed down by whatever bureaucracy he is now a part of.
Oh, I see. So you see more of the Admiralty Starfleet angle instead of just
because we don't need to see another thing of the Defiant going off and destroying whatever. But I mean, if they wanted to show Sisko trying to help out with the mission from back at the station in some way, whether it was like fielding communicate, you know what I mean? Like him trying to be involved in this thing where the Admiral's like, bro, just chill out. You know, it's fine. Go do X, Y, and Z. We need you here checking files or something. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing where he's being, even though he's technically been promoted, he is ultimately kind of impotent as far as the engagement in the conflict. Because I mean, he's still, you know, anytime they talk about the conflict or the possibility of blowing up people, he's like, nice. You know, like I think he even does it in this episode where they talk about that, and he's like, I cannot wait to kill everything. So he's got like some skin in the game as far as wanting to get out there. So you would think chaining him to a desk, you know, much like the Dick Tracy movie, would be very stressful and cause him to push back. And maybe he does that. I don't know if he stays in this position. Maybe it gets there. But here, they didn't do a very good job of establishing that he is feeling left out or feeling, you know, held back in some sense.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
I mean, as much as Worf needs to be reassured that the wedding will happen. I think
Worf is like the worst mother-in-law character of all time in this. He's upset. He's taking up important communication time talking about the wedding. Just very worried about it. Very worried.
But Captain, I've already bought the flowers.
The florist came in, and this asshole told me that he didn't have tulips available. I was like, "What? Klingon Raktajino is going to be up there. You need some tulips." I think that the problem with the What I think that they should have probably done is if you end up splitting time between the Defiant and Sisko, right? Like, I think what they're trying to say here is that the crew is a kind of family that Sisko's leaving behind, which is a very Star Trek-y thing. That's always been like a point of that breakup. And Sisko King.
I'm surprised they didn't have a scene where the Admiral's like, you know, Ben, you are getting older, and he's like, oh, age. The one thing that every Starfleet captain must eventually address in order to get the accolades that they deserve from the viewing public.
Bullets, my only weakness.
Yeah, once I start to acknowledge how old I am, that's when the fans start saying I'm doing my best work.
Give me a new jacket and a little bit more of a froey haircut.
Do you have any glasses I can wear? Those always help.
I think if you cut back and forth between the Defiant, and you played off of this family thing, and the Defiant's going through this exciting sort of mission or whatever, and you maybe don't need to see all of it, but then you cut back and forth to Sisko being inundated by the bureaucracy. I think a good way to approach it is kind of similar to showing the Federation as somewhat similar to the Vorta from the last, Kevin, the Vorta from the last episode, where the Defiant can be embroiled in this like foots-on-the-ground fight, and Starfleet is aware of what's going on, but Sisko is now in the bureaucracy that has to be the unfeeling, like, number-crunching aspect of war management, where Starfleet is sort of willing to sacrifice the Defiant, or like, they kind of aren't, they don't have the attachment that Sisko does to this crew, so Sisko feels like a fish out of water and is ineffective in his role as that kind of liaison or admiral role, or whatever you want to look at it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
The good part of the story is the DS9 stuff. Do you want to open this? Talk about the Odo, Kira, and Nog storyline where the resistance is strong.
Well, first of all, I think Odo has to be a little bit more keep that shit on the DL a little bit more, and not literally say, "Kira, I'll see you at the resistance meeting later."
It's very open. Very open.
It's like someone being like, "Are you coming to the murder planning party later?"
They're so open with the talk of what's going on that the female changeling doesn't even shapeshift to hide. She just hides behind the wall in the next room and comes out and is like, "I heard everything. Thank you."
Oh, yeah. I thought that stuff was really good. I really liked the Kira versus Odo dynamic that they've been playing with. I thought the scenes with Odo and the Founder were kind of forgettable. I appreciate what they're doing, and I appreciate where it ends up, but I don't know. It just seemed like the two of them, anytime that they were talking, it was just a lot of the same, changeling mumbo jumbo that they use all the time. I wasn't really getting anything out of it except for more talk of like, oh, I feel separated from the link. Well, you must link with us so you can feel one. And oh, we are one, but we are many. So yes, but we are many, but we are also one. It's all right, cool. It was just it didn't seem like they had a lot to offer from those scenes. It is really funny to think of Odo being late for work essentially because he's in his room jerking off.
Odo, pick up the phone, Odo. Odo.
You've been locked in the bathroom for an hour and a half.
Basically, he's getting his rocks off. He's turning into a rock and all that. The changeling thing, I think, I'd agree that when these two get together, they typically just talk about changeling, like what it's like to be a changeling kind of stuff. And I don't think that's really the important aspect of the changeling, so it's kind of weird that they stick with it. I know that they want to show that Odo's like very interested in what it means to be a changeling, and he doesn't really have any understanding of what it means, how they act, and things like that. But I think that the most important aspect of the changeling is the link still here, which they stress a lot. To varying degrees of effectiveness, they kind of get away with these. They write in the line Odo's like, don't worry, I didn't let her read my thoughts this time, so she doesn't know about the resistance cell. They had to kind of putter around that, but
I bet he thinks strippers like him too.
That waitress really likes me. I think that the Odo, that storyline works for me just out of the fact of like I think that they play the changelings kind of subtly there, and it's another feather in the hat of the show where I think that they do the same with Wei Yun, where you're never quite sure what he thinks or like how he's acting and like what he's trying to do ultimately. I feel like the changelings here are kind of the same, where I get the sense that she's manipulating Odo to cause him to come to their side and sort of disrupt this resistance cell that's growing, but at the same time, I think they also sell the job that the changelings kind of need the link. Like the link is very important to them. And I do believe that she came to DS9 at least partially to link with another changeling because of what they seem to get out of it. So I think it's good there. Like she's not a mustache twirling villain where she's clearly just doing this for her own ends. I think they do a good job of making it more subtle than that.
Yeah. Yeah, they. I feel like they kind of forget where Odo stands sometimes, because like I was surprised that he was so into it so quickly, and not a little bit more dismissive. I guess they did have that discussion where he was like, "Hey, you turned me into a solid," and she was like, "It was what we had to do. I'm sorry." Yeah,
well, I think he's also he's supposed to be at his lowest point because of the Kira angle too, right? He's being driven to do this because he's so frustrated by the Kira situation. He has that line about like, when we disagree, it ruins my whole day. When we have a mild disagreement, it ruins my whole day. So I think they do a good job of showing why he would want to link. I think the problem is that the link has never been portrayed this addictively before. Yeah. Like he links with himself in the Children of Time episode, which is how he learns that he killed everybody to save Kira. Which I think is a fantastic lead-in.
Always in the bathroom linking with himself.
It's I'll do it myself, Mom. The Children of Time thing actually feeds into this one pretty well, because I think Children of Time, Odo's decision is the same decision he makes here, where Odo's always going to try to do what's best. Odo will always do what's best for him to an extent that it kind of becomes a little bit morally queasy for the other characters.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that he wasn't more against it, or at least like smarter about it. Like, and I know that they're playing him as they were starting to play him like a drug addict sort of, where he's like getting kind of shaky and he's like, I don't know. I mean, I haven't linked with anyone in so long, you know.
Yeah.
But I feel like he's still the kind of character who would recognize why that might be a bad idea.
So you think that the show hasn't sold the Dominion's enticing of Odo quite well enough? I would agree with that. I think Odo's arc through this 6-episode arc has been a little bit strange. He's been neutered for a reason that I don't really understand, and he comes across as a little bit more weak-willed than he previously was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I did like is that the idea that I was talking about previously with Kira, where she was kind of being seduced by that side, they seem to kind of be pushing Odo down that route, which I think is interesting because he's not really the one you would expect to go that way, but he has shown more tendencies to sort of play the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Which, you know, if you catch him on the right angle, he might end up going down the wrong path and not even realize it. Which is, I think, kind of what they're doing here. But even so, yeah, I feel like he's definitely been neutered, and the fact that he doesn't realize that, you know, he doesn't fight against his nature at all, his changeling nature, really.
Yeah.
He's just sort of like bemoaning the fact that he is a changeling and, you know, can never be loved or whatever. And then just goes for it. And like, he doesn't really consider that, yeah, I mean, part of, you just had this conversation about when you link with changelings, they are all part of the same being. So you would assume that you would be handing over a lot of secrets to this person or this other, this body who you are currently involved in a war with.
Yeah, she says, why bother talking? Let's just link and immediately know what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm surprised that he doesn't even like consider that, or if he does, they don't really spend any time on it. They have that one scene, like you were saying, with him and Kira, where he's like, "Oh, I didn't tell her anything this time." But
right.
It's like, yeah, it's a little too late for me.
I think,
but I mean, at the same time, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could argue that that's on purpose. You know, maybe it's tough because if you say it's on purpose, then I feel like it's a little bit, it's out of character for him.
If what's on purpose? His shift?
If him being reckless in that way with the founder, to link with the founder without considering how that might be handing over secrets, or, you know, at the very least exposing the resistance or whatever. If that is a decision made on purpose by the writers to have him act recklessly, then it's like, well, I don't know. That seems really out of character for him, a way that doesn't seem super earned isn't the right word, but he's not really known to do that. So
I could see that if Odo went in with I'm going to link because I can gain information about her from it, and she comes out as the superior changeling in that exchange, as I think she would, and she learns everything about him in its place. I could see that going. I think that what I think of the problem with the Link storyline, and I really like the Odo and Kira storyline, but I think what the Link is doing is the Link is a story shortcut to avoid having to tell the tale of Odo being swayed to the Dominion side.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that I would actually appreciate more and I think this would be interesting in terms of the Dominion because of Odo's attitude and the sacrifices we've seen him choose to make in Children of Time and everything. I think that you could write the Dominion arguing a point of view about life that Odo would agree with on some level, and he would start to become swayed by their argument about how they view the universe and everything like that. And I think the Link does away with that by basically making him a pussy whipped drug addict on some level. Yeah. And it doesn't really feel great. It's just like you'd prefer a stronger character like Odo to be sort of like taken control by his more base instincts that he's been trying to fight against, and the Dominion being very effective at, once they've removed him from Federation influences, they can kind of sway him back that way. And I feel they just don't have the time to do that. And they just had to jump cut to Odo is now a compromised entity on the station.
Yeah, I think it feels disingenuous because, like you said before, they've never really portrayed the linking thing as this weird drug or
get
addictive type thing
ecstatic,
that needs to happen. It's not like Ponfar or something,
Right.
And I think by not establishing that, you take away Odo's not making a choice here that has consequences. It's just him, making a mistake, really. And it's not...
I think he's making a choice, but he's not at all pushing back against his mistake. It's like he kind of just takes this like light tumble down the hill and then just rolls for a long way down it. It's not really exciting.
If it was previously established as this addictive thing, then him choosing to just, not consider the ramifications of it and just sort of fall into it and then end up becoming this sort of like mind-controlled or turned character by the effect of his own weakness would feel more genuine.
Yeah.
But they haven't done that. And so at the same time, he's not really making a choice. If they weren't using the link thing as the shorthand for him turning, you would have this really interesting thing of, well, then he's actually making a choice to follow it. Like you were saying, if there's a certain worldview that maybe he links, he connects with or something, where he is actually making a choice within the parameters of his character and his being that has consequences, that's interesting. But as it stands, they're not doing either of those things. So then it's just, we want him to kind of go down the left-hand path, but we want it to be in a way where we can still pull him back out, and it's not really that big of a deal.
Right. Yeah, it's a problem that can easily be erased by not having him link anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I think it comes back to consequences of things, right? It's, my favorite thing in stories. And it's not a matter of a choice with consequences or consequences born out of previous character stuff. It's just, this is what we need to do for now so we can get to point B. And it just doesn't feel like it sits right.
Yeah. It's too bad because it's buoyed by some pretty good performances, I think. The Non-Visitor is very good in this. I think that Kira's coming out the winner of this arc, this like serialized arc that they've been doing.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
She's had really good episodes. Her characterization makes a lot of sense in a way that sometimes the other characters don't. I think that the most modern aspect of this episode is the Odo and Kira thing. I just think that it could probably be stretched out a little bit more, even more so than it is in this episode. It could have spanned a little bit of a longer time. But my takeaway from the episode is that these were arcs that felt like they should have spanned a few episodes at least, and they're instead kind of shuttled off to just this one sort of 45-minute thing, and you accomplish a lot in that 45 minutes. But outside of that, I think that I think it's just an interesting sort of setup for where they are in this arc. We've got the two more after this. It's the two-parter that sort of closes it out and everything. But this is, I don't know. I thought it was like a dull episode, but a very interesting episode at the same time. Like it felt extremely low in conflict, which was kind of strange to me, even though I think that the Odo and Kira storyline is full of conflict, but it felt very low key for what was going on. Yeah,
I would agree. I found myself zoning out during some of those Odo and Founder sequences. But yeah, I think while I agree with that, it feels like they're rushing through this stuff a little bit. It also doesn't feel like they're doing too much per episode, In
a good way, or you mean that they need more? You said that as if you mean it's a good thing.
Yeah, like I feel like they are moving through the beats of the story fairly quickly, but I don't think that they're making any huge jumps between episodes that feel illogical. And also, what they're actually giving you episode to episode feels it doesn't feel like they're cramming too much in,
Right. Yeah.
So where you can, we've seen other stuff that we complain that they're moving too fast because they're just giving you like 5 episodes worth of plot in one episode so they can get to the next thing, and it's like there's just so much shit in here that doesn't stick. This at least feels like they're taking their time within the episode to kind of be okay, this is the episode where this happens. Then the next episode, we're going to shift it a little bit this way. We're going to shift it a little bit this way. And so they're kind of breaking it up and pacing it out. So it is moving fast, but it doesn't feel like they are just burning through it.
Yeah.
Because like I would love it. I think the Odo and Kira and the Terok Nor thing could be like a whole season's worth of stuff.
It really could. It's really, it's been a very consistent, good set of episodes for that storyline.
Yeah.
And it stands in real contrast to the Starfleet stuff. Just doesn't work. I have a couple of thoughts, but why do you, if you'd agree, why would you think that the Starfleet stuff seems so much less impressive than the stuff that's going on the station?
Because we're not seeing anything.
Yeah.
You know, like they're in the middle of this big war, but you're not seeing any of it. You're not really seeing the consequences of any of the battles that have been happening. You're just hearing about it off screen.
What would you say that you're seeing on Terok Nor at this point? Just the change in status quo? Yeah,
you've got visual representations or illustrations of the power of the founders and the Cardassians and the Jem'Hadar. There's a presence of them there, and they are actively pushing, even though you're not really seeing them actually do anything for the most part.
They literally just sit in the bar not drinking. Is like in canon, that's what they're doing. Yeah,
but their presence is strong enough, and they are pushing back against the status quo we're used to, and specifically Kira and Odo, that you're seeing the character stuff between them really do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And it's a smaller story, you know? Like, I think you could argue that you could go bigger with the story that they're telling from the Starfleet angle, because the stuff they're doing on Terok Nor is so small. You know, you could get kind of like a big picture, small picture kind of thing. And maybe that's kind of what they're trying to do, but I think the big picture stuff is just too, they don't have the budget to do anything with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every episode needs to be like, you know,
Sisko with a gun running across a field. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like space battles or anything. And, but like, there's been so much stuff that's either just relegated to the interior of the Defiant or the interior of that space station.
Yeah.
That it's just like, I'm kind of missing whatever's happening outside the walls of this place. Like, they come back from that mission that they run, and they do that thing with the phaser thing, which was not, I liked it. I liked the way it was that they mirrored that at the beginning, at the end.
You know what my
like
problem with that,
Troopers.
not to interrupt, my problem is, there was this decision to make this prop. They told the actors to act as if this thing weighs a lot for some reason.
Yeah.
And they have a sound effect when they put it down. It's like a dunk, dunk when they put it down. Yeah. And the actors, Cole Meany and Avery Brooks, are like really like acting that they're struggling to lift this thing. Terry Farrell does not get that memo. Apparently, she's just waving hers around when she eventually picks hers up, and she just like throws it against the wall. It was like this inconsistency in the handling of why this thing would weigh so much, and all the actors not agreeing on how much the thing is going to weigh.
Yeah, I mean, just put that on the list for her. Unfortunately,
it's just not, well, I didn't understand why they made it heavy, and like why make it heavy just for the dramatic effect of being like, oh, this is the up here.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, it's that stuff is nice. Like, you're getting some camaraderie stuff and all this, but like, you're not. I guess it's really tough to kind of pick a lane with this stuff, right? Because we've complained about, oh well, you know, it's just another episode where they're on the ship going to do something, and then they do something and come back, and it's like, okay, well, this episode they don't do that.
Yep. But
you feel kind of like you're missing out. Or like there's no focus. There's no focus to the Starfleet stuff because there's no conflict other than that.
Yep.
So it's difficult to pick a lane as to what you want out of it, but it just feels really, I don't know. It feels like their coverage of the war and what they're trying to, the stories they're trying to tell from the war is not completely parsed out. Like, every now and then you get Rocks and Shoals, which is fantastic. But even that is a very small scale story that is a microcosm of the larger war, and that stuff works great.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think we've talked about this before. When you get into like these massive, cosmic level scale stakes and stuff, the reason that stuff works is because you wrap it around a small personal story, and that really boosts all that stuff up. And this doesn't have that for the Starfleet stuff in this episode, but it definitely has it for the Terok Nor stuff.
Yeah, I think that on like a very stupid base level, the Terok Nor story is actually interesting the whole way through, and they've struggled to have a Starfleet story that matches that. I think one of the big issues is that the Starfleet stuff feels like it's a normal DS9 episode where the crew is just not on the station, and the Terok Nor stuff feels like it's a different show at that point, because those characters are in like a really different situation and everything's very different for them. The Starfleet stuff feels like any kind of away mission where they're on the Defiant for a while. Yeah. And I think that the Rocks and Shoals was good because I think that they should have, for the Starfleet stuff, they should have focused more on the trauma of what this conflict is doing across the galaxy or across this Alpha Quadrant or whatever. Yeah. And they aren't really doing that. Like it's Sisko being upset about his new job, kind of, and it's like, does that really matter? Like at this point, like he should just kind of suck it up or like come up with a better issue for him. And I think that's the problem with the Starfleet stuff, is that it doesn't really show the impact of this war, and I think they should have done it in more small-scale stories like that. Yeah. Everyone seems pretty happy.
I think they actually could have benefited from going back to the TNG style a little bit. By having stuff where, okay, you've got Sisko taking off command of the Defiant and he's back on the space station. So why don't you have the person above him giving the orders be someone that he doesn't agree with or that he thinks is pushing things too far? Like a crazy admiral story. It doesn't have to be crazy, but like you're taking him off the Defiant, and then maybe the mission that they send the Defiant on is one that is kind of a suicide mission or something like that, and he feels like the admiral is overstepping and putting his men in danger, that kind of shit. Or
it's a very agreeable admiral in this episode. He's probably the nicest admiral.
He's the nicest admiral they've ever had on any Star Trek show. I wonder if he doubles as a psychologist in his off hours.
He does a better job of it, I think. He can get to the bottom of Ben Sisko's psyche in a way that Cornwall has some problems.
You know there's a problem when Sisko shows up in his finest club attire to talk about his inner feelings.
Avery Brooks would look good in that black suit.
He would. Yeah, he'd look pretty fly. But have the Defiant encounter a planet or a people who have been damaged by the war in some sense. You know what I mean? Right. I think that the older style TNG stuff might have been, maybe it would have been a crutch, but I think it would have been an easy way to get into some of that stuff. And show the ramifications of what actually was happening.
That's true. It's interesting to look back on this in hindsight. I would say that the serialized thread is the Terok Nor stuff, where all of that feels to take place in kind of a real time, where everything flows from one stop to the other. If you had paired that with a more traditional, like episodic standalone story that the Starfleet guys did each time, I think that would probably have been the best of both worlds in that situation. And they would have been able to split the difference and not make it seem like the Starfleet crew stuff is really on the same level as what's going on the station. They can kind of focus it on one of the storylines. And it would actually free up the writers in terms of who needs to be where for certain things. Because you could just kind of move them around as what we want to be. Let's see. I think we're going to play an audio clip. We're going to come back, we're going to read some patron thoughts, we're going to give our final thoughts, and then we're going to wrap up Behind the Lines.
What the hell happened? Why didn't you disable that alarm?
It's difficult to explain.
Rom is sitting in a holding cell being interrogated. He was counting on you. I was counting on you.
I know.
You know? Do you realize what you just did? You just handed the Alpha Quadrant to the Dominion.
I was in the link.
Are you saying you forgot?
I didn't forget. It just didn't seem to matter.
A lot of people are going to die. Don't you care?
It has nothing to do with me.
How can you say that?
If you could experience the link, you'd know why nothing else matters.
The last 5 years. Your life here, our friendship, none of that matters.
It did once. I wish I could make you understand, but you can't. You're not a changeling.
You're right. I'm a solid.
All right, everybody. So if you want to support the show, if you've enjoyed the content today, you can go to patreon.com/the Pensky File and support the show there. For a couple $1 a month, you get extra stuff. You help us keep the lights on, all that good stuff. And the Captain tier supporters get a shout out. So special thanks to Andrew Cherlog, Ben Douglas, Bradley Killens, Captain Quark, Cardinal Doomsday, Christian Pouch, David K, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, Yarpy, Joint Mango, Kevin Reyes, Kyle Barrett, Matt Flores, Matt Cutler, Matt Ross, Mike Burnett, Nathan Elliott, Neil Brennan, Nick Sergi, Robert Cummins, Russell Elledge, Sam Custer, Grim Santo, Sean Spinobi, Stephen Cobb, Tark Latif, and Will Yates. Thank you guys very much for your support. And now we're going to move to some patron thoughts. Support the show on Patreon. You get to leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes. We read them, and I'm going to do that right now. Zam Nuclear Wessel says, behind the lines, Dax commanding the Defiant makes a lot of sense. And the idea of her crew fighting harder to have her harder to be sure she can have her wedding is appealing, but a lot of Dax stuff, it may work better in theory than in practice. But I do like that even as captain, she still has to be Bashir's wing trill. That's a good point. Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree. It works better in theory than practice.
Yeah, I did like that scene where Bashir was like, "Tell her that I am not lying." Because I am trying to sleep with this woman.
And also, good on Dax. The Admiral's like, Commander Dax, like, great mission. She's like, thanks, Admiral, but I have to go help Julian nail this alien woman in the back over here. Good wingman. Yarpy says, behind the lines, a very nice build-up for the conclusion in the next 2 episodes. Quote, quiet before the storm, end quote. One of those necessary episodes in the longer arcs, which many of the new TV productions seem to forget. Gotta have the lows to contrast with the highs. Is that the most positive way to say you didn't like the episode, I think? Is what I'm reading there. Christian Pouch says, not a ton of action, but a lot of great character stuff. I'm not sure what to think of the stuff on the Defiant/Starbase because it feels a little like treading water. We have Sisko giving up the Defiant and sitting in an office while others do the hard work, but I'm not sure if that's developed enough to be satisfying. The ceremony with the spent phaser coils is a bit hokey, but I like it. It's the kind of thing I could realistically see a military unit doing to keep their morale up. Starfleet crews can often seem so sterile and detached, so I like this. Also, shout out to Admiral Ross, probably the best and most reasonable Admiral Starfleet has ever had. On the station, a lot more stuff happens. The awesome brawl at the beginning, Damar working on the minefield, the Resistance attempts to thwart it, and Odo's obvious manipulation by the female changeling. I think Odo's change only makes sense if you think of him like a human. Why would he betray his friends like that? But he's not human, he's an alien who thinks differently, and for whom the Great Link is the crux of his entire existence and being. All in all, a very good episode. We didn't talk about... yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, they should have, instead of just parading that coil around, they should have filled it with Romulan ale and everybody had to drink from it.
Like a Stanley Cup celebration.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the what the Resistance is doing, which is kind of setting up the Cardassians and the Dominion to fight with each other. They do that with Damar.
The Resistance, that one Resistance scene, I did really like the first one, even though Kira is like unrealistically narrating what's happening.
Yeah, explaining to the audience what exactly is going on. Yeah,
I thought that was good. I like that. But the other Resistance scene where they all meet up for like their potluck dinner or whatever reminded me of the scene from Life of Brian, where they have the contrasting religious groups who are part of the same group, but they have the slightly different name. I can't remember what the fuck it is, but they're just arguing over what words to use and stuff like that. It's much funnier than I just said. Look it up. Good movie.
They're on Netflix at this point. I think the Damar setup thing is it's kind of along the lines of like the Odo's like, don't worry, I linked with her, but I didn't tell anything. So Damar writes up this like high school shooter manifesto about how he's going to kill everybody. They find it and they're just like, hey, why are you leaving this stuff laying around, buddy? Like, this is not cool. It seemed like there was not enough
and then
ramifications. He gets promoted. Yeah, it's not like they're like, wow, you really effed that up, Damar. Like, way to expose the fact that you want to murder our entire, ally over here. It was a little bit of a strange setup, but he gets promoted, yeah. And you'll learn that he likes to drink. Yeah.
We didn't even talk about Rom getting caught doing that thing at the end there. The dark side of me was thinking like, oh, they're just going to execute him.
In a modern TV show, I think that's how you sell what Odo has done, right? Rom dies because of that. Yeah. And here they're kind of held back by the fact that Rom has to continue to exist on this series.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Behind the lines. Where is it? There it is. Character conflicts in a military starfleet. If Roddenberry had survived to this point, then this episode would have killed him. I think the stuff on DS9 is great. This is Kyle Barrett, by the way, if I didn't say. I buy Odo's choices, and Kira proves to be the standout character of this arc. However, I'm much more conflicted on the Sisko storyline. I think it's fine, but they could have gone so much deeper. I would have loved for the show to take full advantage of this arc and draw parallels between the Starfleet space station and DS9 through the eyes of Sisko. Instead of the conflict of Sisko's reassignment being about generically worrying about his ship and officers, I would have preferred it to be about him feeling resigned that he's no closer to retaking DS9, is no longer in a position to do so, and has now found a home on a new space station. Sisko's inner conflict seems to be misplaced to me, but even so, it's another solid episode that gets us ready for what's to come. That's a good idea, to treat the station as a, not quite DS9 spot. Because you can play into the emissary and everything like that there. Will Yates, behind the lines, I loved Wayun's mannerism when the Cardassians were leaving the bar, and again at Ducat's impiety to the founder when they first meet. Combs really knows how to chew the scenery. Rom falls effortlessly into that idiot savant role. I was really surprised with how much more there was to this episode on a rewatch of the series. Andrew Churlog, behind the lines, this is the last one. One last question. Does the Dominion really not bug the quarters of people living on the station? Kira and company really seem to have a lot of easy conversation as they plan a revolt. Groundwork episode setting up tension.
They don't even do that thing like we're in the spy movies where they put the record player on really loud.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just put some white noise into the room.
Yeah.
Groundwork episode setting up tension for the retake of DS9. A solid episode. Thank you, patrons. Thank you for leaving your thoughts. Thank you for supporting the show. Clay, on a scale of 1 to 5, what are you going to give Behind the Lines?
Give it a 3.
Yeah. I'd give it a 3 too, although I feel like my 3 here has to make me retroactively give Sons and Daughters a 2, kind of. I think this is better than Sons and Daughters, the Klingon episode.
Yep.
But I think it's a 3. I really like the station stuff outside of those sort of weird plot mechanics that they're doing with Odo, but I like the point that they're trying to get to, and the Starfleet stuff doesn't really feel all that spectacular. It feels very run of the mill.
Yeah, I'm curious to see as we go on whether or not my ratings have really leveled off, because it feels like it's starting to get into that point where it's like I can't really, unless there's a fantastic one or a terrible one, I can't really
divide. You can't tell a 4 and a 2 from the 3s and the 5s.
Yeah.
It's unique too because of how the serialized nature is impacting that a little bit. Once they stop doing that, I think that it becomes a little bit easier, but you do kind of base it all kind of depends on what they do in the next episode with how I give this one. So we'll see how that comes. But I'm going to give this one a 3 as well. I'll keep Sons and Daughters at a 3. And we'll wrap it up with the 2-parter finale, which is Favor the Bold and Sacrifice of Angels, I believe. Let me confirm that. Favor the Bold, Sacrifice of Angels. Yep, that's the 2-parter that wraps it up. All right, we're done. Thank you guys very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. You can click all the links down below. Those social media, Discord, Patreon, all that stuff. Thank you very much for listening, guys, and thank you for supporting the show. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
When does this come out?
This comes out tomorrow.
So Tuesday, we've got Badass is coming back for season 2. That's the Batman the Animated Series show that I do with Sean Murphy, where we cover Batman the Animated Series. That's going to be starting again on Tuesday. We're going to be doing a weekly format instead of dumping them all, so that'll be fun. And next month in July, I'm going to be running a Kickstarter for a comic book I'm going to be doing called Bloody Hell, so keep your eyes and ears open for that.
Sure. So we got Badass coming out tomorrow, and then every Tuesday probably after that for a little while. And then Clay's Kickstarter. We'll post more information about that when that happens. So thank you very much, guys, for listening. Thank you for supporting the show, and we'll see you next time with Favor the Bold and Sacrifice of Angels, which we're going to be doing in a single podcast. See ya.